Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
You look all prepared today. I'm proud of
We
you.
got feedback. Yeah. I got to look a little
You
better.
got feedback?
Next year, maybe next week, I'll even have a haircut, my Easter haircut. So by the third week, I'll have this thing figured out.
As long as it's not, are you gonna go back to that person that messed it up last time?
That what?
Didn't somebody mess it up? Didn't you ask for like
Oh
a
yeah, that's why. Yeah. We're
yeah.
still, yeah.
Yeah, you're still
It's not
dealing
as
with
bad as
that?
I thought,
Okay.
but yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. Anyways, this is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve.
Steve. We're in video format now and audio format still, and we're gonna come to the metaverse next. That's our next.
Ooh,
No, we're not. I have no
okay,
clue.
good.
I have
That's
no
good.
clue how that would work. Um, I also don't even own anything that does that stuff. So that's fine. We'll get there some other day. But we've got a good show, I think. We've got a couple things to catch up on related to Penn State basketball. We'll also talk about the NCAA tournaments, mints there. And then I wrote down UCF, but I meant UFC and WWE kind of combining. So UCF in Orlando is not combining with WWE. And then this week's old guy, young guy, very spring, very, very related to the season.
Cool.
So ready?
Yes, sir. Can't wait. Don't have to wait. Here we are.
Yeah, perfect. I'm actually not going to go on a diatribe to start today. I'm gonna put the ball in your court.
Uh-oh.
Steve, how do you feel about Mike Rhoades?
It's not awful. That's not for high praise, right? Um, he was probably the best guy out there for them, right? Like proven track record, been in the tournament, not super sexy, but I don't know who super sexy is. Pennsylvania native, um, small college background, right? So that sounds endearing. Although in this world anymore, I don't know that matters, right? Like we are now, we as in Penn State basketball are now VCU North. Like everybody showed up, like everybody's made the trip. Um, I think it doesn't feel like a bad hire. It's not like they made some season ticket sales because he had some friends apparently who bought tickets and family members. So that's great. Um, but I don't have a lot of dislike for it. I think it was a good, safe, right hire, I guess.
That's about
You
where
you look
the
unconvinced
no,
though.
that's about where I'm at with it too. Like it, I don't think someone had jokingly said Jay Wright for Penn State basketball coach, and I just like actually I don't think that person was joking. I'm pretty sure they listen to this podcast, um, but I don't think they were joking. But like let's play that joke out a little bit. Like I don't even think Jay Wright would make me excited if he came to Penn State basketball, just given how everything kind of shook out. It's a very awkward time. If this is for a team or program a school, I guess probably would be the best way to say it, that probably doesn't lose coaches very often, whether it's football. You've really only had two changes in my lifetime. Basketball, really only, well, two and a half changes over the course that I've really been paying attention. And even Lady Lions basketball has relatively been the same. Volleyball has been relatively the same, but on both sides. It just feels weird, and so I don't think there's anyone that could make me excited. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not underwhelmed. I'm very much whelmed, like a nice medium if it was a steak. Um, I I I don't know. Again, like I don't know that much about the basketball aspect of all of this. I think he is a good coach. He's got, if I'm like looking at the stats and resume, he's very much there. You look at some of this defensive prowess, I guess, is what makes him him. I'm fascinated to see how that plays out in the Big Ten, which doesn't always play out as it. Like I feel like that was kind of Chambers's MO to a degree, and that didn't play out very well. I think he's a better recruiter than Chambers. I don't know if he's a better recruiter than Micah. Um, but yeah, it didn't really do a whole lot for me. And I think, no offense to him, he seems like a nice guy. I just, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
like I don't. They could have gotten it wrong. They didn't. I mean, he's the right guy at the right time. The thing that was the thing that stuck out to me about the news conference, I don't know that he won the news conference. He played it well. Like he hit all the right spots, did all that. Like I didn't come out of the thing, oh my God, sign me up for tickets. This guy has got me impassioned and ready to go. And here we go. The thing that stood out most to me about the news conference was Pat Kraft shutting down the question about like the process. Like somebody, I think it was John Sauber from the CDT, asked about the process, like the timing of the search and what was going on. He's like, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to. And I don't know what I was missing there about why that was such a bad thing. Like, hey, we talked to him. We started talking to him after this, or yeah, we had conversations before, because now it's come out that Michael was talking to Notre Dame in the
Well
middle of
before,
February,
yeah.
right? But I don't know what was bad about that. That just felt weird to me. Like I don't know why that wasn't a topic for fair game. But otherwise, I thought everything was hit all the right notes. Pictures of the family and video of the family in the crowd. Somebody's getting a bunch of VCU clothing somewhere from Goodwill in whatever town VCU is, and they're going to change their attire to blue and white.
You don't know what town VCU is in?
No,
it's Richmond.
It's in Richmond. There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah, the press conference was interesting, and it wasn't interesting from the Mike Rhoades standpoint. It was interesting from the Pat Kraft standpoint, because this was the first time he really kind of had to face the music, so to speak. And I didn't feel like there was any music for him to hear. Just outside of that, really that one question, I don't know if I would have asked those types of questions, but I was expecting, given how much animosity, I guess, has built up lately over things. And I think maybe some of that is the people that would be in that room asking that question know that NIL stuff isn't Kraft's. It is, but it isn't his responsibility. And I think that maybe played into it. But yeah, for introductory press conferences go, it was very ho-hum. Didn't make me, nothing Mike Rhoades said made me really want to run through a wall type thing or be reignited by Penn State basketball.
There were no turnovers. There was nothing bad about it. It was just it was okay, and it was an announcement. That was the other thing. It wasn't a news conference, right? Because there's the people in the media sitting right next to the family and friends, and that's how you do it, right? If you're the person who's controlling the show, like you make sure that that's there, and there's not going to be any tough questions or negative questions because you're sitting next to his father-in-law, right, or the kids, right? You're just not going to toss those questions out, and you're not getting an answer in that setting too. So I get it, and I don't know what questions there are, but that's always interesting to me when they do these rollout things. When you've got the alumni and the fans and whatever else, along with the media, nothing's going to come out of there that matters. So, and as long as nothing comes out of there that's embarrassing, which wasn't, then it's a W. So there you go. He's got his first W.
Where was I going with that? Yeah, that's a good point about the setting. I think that also plays into a factor, or is a factor into it. I know where I was going. Steve, you are an older alum comparatively to me, so you know about Joe Crispin's playing days. Why are so many people so fired up about Joe Crispin coming back? Because I don't get it. Maybe I do get it. I don't know.
I think I don't know that I'm fired up. I thought it was a good addition, although like he's got his whole staff. So Joe Crispin feels more like a token hire now.
That's what I thought.
I think that's kind of what it is. And this is certainly a better gig than a Division III head coaching spot, right? But Steve Jones said it somewhere between coaches that his requirement, his hope for the next coach, is that they want to be here and do their job as much as he wants to be here and do his job, which I think Crispin gives a little bit of legitimacy to. It makes it all seem a little less transactional, carpetbaggery. Here's the next big gig. They've got a coming home story to it. So I because his title is what, like
assistant to the head coach,
right?
Quite
like,
literally,
so it might as well say token Penn Stater, right? I mean, realistically, and not to dismiss him, hell of a player, apparently a nice guy. But when you bring the whole VCU staff and him, he's just there to help Penn State people feel excited that he's part of it, right? Now, again, maybe assistant to the head coach is how you get another body to help it practice. That's how they're doing. To get around the rules, you have bigger staffs now. They call them whatever. Yeah, I'm not over the moon about it, but I think it's good to have a presence in this world that's ever changing, because we don't do a lot of change here, as you said, so it gives a little bit of, at least a tip of the cap at some stability, maybe.
other thing that fascinated me, let me back up there and give an opinion. I just let me spin a conspiracy theory. I really feel like he was hired like as a, you need to hire him just in case you leave, so that we've got the next guy on the staff already, type thing.
Right, or somebody who's there, right? Like, because if it wasn't him, because the other names that come up, like when I was throwing out, thinking of Danny Earls at UT Chattanooga, who's now a head coach, right? Like if you're looking for a Penn Stater, as if being a Penn Stater matters with our rich basketball tradition, right? Like that you got to have somebody. But yeah, it just felt like he was part of the deal.
Yeah,
Just like a home and home series was part of the deal, right? Like,
yeah, that was kind of bizarre, funny. It gave me something to laugh about. I've never heard of that. Good for VCU. Like, if you're taking a coach, we at least want some revenue coming back
Right.
back this way. And I'm sure that game will probably be a sellout for them, or close to a sellout at home,
Yeah.
because it's a huge deal for them. So I thought that was interesting. There was another thought I just had related to basically, like, I thought the other key interesting thing that came out of all of this, the contract showed up day one. Like we never got Micah Shrewsbury's contract. You used to have to fight tooth and nail to get Pat Chambers's contract. Even James Franklin's contract has like kind of not been the easiest thing to get, and it seems like maybe now we've turned that corner. I don't know why. It's very much like TV ratings, and we can discuss that when we get to the tournament and stuff. But I don't know why we necessarily care about that, but I think we should. And getting it right off the bat maybe that was like a slight little peace offering to Penn State fans of, I screwed this up, so here's this little cookie that'll shut up some people, I think. I don't know. I thought that was interesting, because I also now wonder, and I have to go back and read all of the stuff around it. Basically, Penn State's really only required to release the football and men's basketball salary, I think, is how it's written in like the charter, so that Penn State can still get money. It all relates to like Sunshine Act type stuff. You probably know better than I do, but that's why we don't see like Cale Sanderson's contract or Guy Gadowski's contract. Or even like really any coach that's been at Penn State outside of men's basketball and football. And so I'm interested to see if that changes. Like, are we going to start to find out Guy Gadowski's contract and how many years it is and how much it's worth? Same with Cale Sanderson. I think at least the revenue producing sports, we should get those contracts.
When OB was hired and they announced him at the Nittany Lion Inn, they handed out his contract and the details in pretty much that same 2-column format that I saw for the basketball coach last week, of year and whatever else. And they talked about men's basketball would also be released going forward. And there was there wasn't a third, I don't know, but that was supposed to change when OB came, and it didn't, right? It just didn't. Because we were at that point, Penn State were very much in post Sandusky. We're going to be transparent. We're going to tell you what's going on. God, the world thinks the ill of us, and we're going to share everything we can. And I think by the time then they got to Chambers, they're like, oh, well, nobody's really asking. So like, we can just keep doing what we're doing. So I'm not really sure why they opened the books on this one. But I think all of them, like at least the revenue producing, because you're asking people to pay their own money to support these things. I mean, ticket holders are bigger stakeholders than anything else. And the hoops you have to jump through to go through and look for it. I mean, you can find it. I have a list. So I think it's sitting over there on a piece of paper of what they were like 4 years ago, right? Like, here's all the head coaches' contracts. But you guys got to really look for them. It just shouldn't be that hard. Like, it just shouldn't be. But
well, and it also needs to be point blank. Like, you and I could probably find out, but and maybe an average Penn State fan doesn't. But like, if you don't really have any ties to the university, it might be hard for you to find out, type thing. What?
Yeah, I mean, I forget what's on the national, whatever, the Education Association or whatever one it is that's national, it has some of that stuff. But I don't think it's super hard, but it just shouldn't be. Like, here's what we did. Here's what we got. Like,
it's an easy win. Like, anytime a contract's re-signed, I'm sure Guy Gadowski's probably gone through. Has now been there. What? Geez, now 11 years. This will be his 12th season. So I'm sure he's had at least 2 contracts in between, or at least 1 contract extension in between there. Maybe probably 2. So I think that's one. And like I said, the Kale thing, we still don't know Kale's big contract from last year. And for a state/school that is so desperately obsessed with wrestling, you think you'd want to know what the greatest wrestling coach of all time's contract is and be transparent about it. Or
it's funny. I think some people, me and other people, like, who cares? He's winning, right? Like, why do we care? You know, you don't know what I'm making as a plumber, like supporting the team and buying my season tickets, or as a business owner. So it's one of those things where I think people would argue it out of both sides of their mouth, depending on when you were asking them, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I just don't think it should be super hard. They're good, prominent gigs. They're not getting state money for them, but they're getting people's hard-earned money to pay for them. But even more directly, they're getting people's money. So how much am I paying you? Right. You know?
Okay.
And back to
Right.
basketball, the thing that I thought was weird with the contract is I don't understand. I mean, I guess 7 years in, he's either good or he's not. And you either want to keep him or he's gone, or maybe he's got an extension. I don't understand why the buyout would ever be less than the year's salary. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, right?
I don't get
That
that.
just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense at all. No logic whatsoever. Why would somebody be able to come and get him for less than what you were going to pay for him?
I don't get that. Let me pull up the contract here. Let me look at this real quick. It's in the article. I don't understand that. I've never understood that. I don't know. I also want to know, and maybe you know, what is supplemental pay versus base pay in these contracts? Because I used to think that was like the Nike aspect of it, essentially. Like,
I think so too. I think that's Nike, that's TV revenue. They probably found some
Okay.
different ways to, like, be able to say, here's your base and here's some more.
Gotcha.
And they probably have a couple of different places
Okay.
for the more, so that when everybody says, what's your base salary, it's less than some other people's. So you don't look like you're paying them so much.
Yeah, I guess if you get to from year 4 to 5, it goes from 6 million to 3 million in terms of buyout. Overall compensation from oh wait, hold on. So yeah, so basically year 5 on, the contract is more expensive than the buyout. I don't
And I
know.
guess by that point, you've either renegotiated if they're good, or
Yeah,
you know they're sucking if somebody, you know, you're not happy,
Yeah.
and if somebody wants to get them off your hands for less than what you're paying them. So what? But it just seems weird that you'd ever have the buyout be less than what you were going to pay the person.
you can tell it's structured though, so that this doesn't happen again. I mean, the buyout's is 15 million, then 12 million, and
Yeah, it's
then
not
9
happening in the
million.
next 2
Yeah.
years.
No,
No
maybe
way.
even 3. Yeah.
Right. They're not in the next 2 or 3 years. Nobody's swooping in and getting them unless they really want them.
So let me ask you this question. This was kind of my ultimate question for you. How many years do you think Mike Rhoades will be the basketball coach at Penn State? Let's go under 5.5.
Ooh. Over.
Yeah, I think I'm an over too. Like I don't think he's going anywhere. For whatever reason, people love when a state guy has the head coaching job in said state. I don't think he's probably going to want to move away from that.
I don't know. I mean, 2 years to be good might be tough again. I mean, I not that that's hard, but it's, you know,
It's doable though.
past 2 years. Yeah,
the
this past
thing.
year they just had everything went right at the end. Not they should have probably been good earlier in the year and been consistent. But I think that's tough to be looking at a tournament in 2 years, right? So then you're not going to run them off. It's only been 2 years. So I don't know. But yeah, I'll go the over on them.
Okay,
5.5.
I think that's about where I'm at with it too. All right. Do you want to talk about the men's tournament or the women's tournament first?
No, Penn State's got a better chance of getting the men's tournament. So let's start there first.
Okay, let's start there. Let's talk about the Final Four. I thoroughly, once again, enjoyed the Final Four broadcast. There wasn't really anything. I know I have an expectation of it, and it always meets that expectation. Never exceeds that expectation, but it always meets that expectation. I thought the Final Four was great. I thought, especially the San Diego State. The San Diego State game was fantastic. The Miami and the other team that played in the basketball game Oh
UConn.
god, UConn. That game was a snooze
The team that
fest. And
won the team that won that game and the
yeah,
next game.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that team. That game was an absolute snooze fest, and I turned that game off. So pretty much pretty late, not late, but midway through the second half. So that's doesn't really matter to me. But I think the topic that kind of got crushed by the fact that the game was so interesting was the fact that San Diego State was playing FAU and nobody going into the game was going to watch it, and it turns out to be this incredible game. I ask you this question, this might direct us off into a different direction. Do sports TV ratings matter to, and should they matter?
Oh, they matter because they matter because they control dollars, right? They set ad rates for the future. They influence contracts going forward. That game saw a bump. That game was actually the better of the two semifinals in terms of people watching. So people were intrigued. And even though the final championship game drew the lowest rating ever, I think it was still better than I think I think I saw this somewhere. It was better than every game of the NBA finals the past year, right? So
Yeah,
it matters because it shows that people are interested in your product. If nobody's watching or nobody's paying attention, then it's not worth as much. Nobody's going to invest in it. Nobody's going to care. It's the women's sports argument, although not the one we're going to have next about women's basketball. But like if nobody's watching women's sport, people always champion women's sports. Hey, you got to watch, you got to do whatever. People can turn it on and find some stuff, and they don't, right? So maybe people aren't as interested. So ratings matter. They had whatever it was, almost 14.7 million people watched the final game of the Final Four. Again, lowest rated game ever, but still won the night. Probably going to be the highest rated sporting event of the week. So it's still like in this world of changed changing how people watch stuff. It's still a very valuable commodity, even though people will beat on it.
I think it's something that you and I are interested in. That's why we have this podcast. I think caring about it like going into the game is weird. I think it's always fascinating though. Like I once the actual number comes in, that's when it gets interesting to me. I'm never gonna like sit here and guess, oh, I think the Super Bowl is gonna have X number of people watching. It's gonna be like that's not fun to me. That's not why I enjoy having these conversations. To me, it's how many people tuned in and why was it down? Okay, well, San Diego State isn't that interesting. Maybe not that much of a brand. UConn, relatively a blue blood, but still maybe not the national appeal. Like it's really only a regional blue blood more so than like a Duke or a UNC that's always going to, crush it in ratings. So, to me, no, I think I'm in between there. That sometimes they matter. They matter after the fact. Like they matter once they happen because then you can actualize on them. Going in, I don't think it matters at all.
No, and people knew that it was going to be down. I mean, people weren't wrong who said it was going to be low rated and poorly watched. And I think they matter. They matter to a comparatively small cohort of people, right? General fans don't care, but if casual fans don't care, but if years of ratings and years of poor stuff happen and games are no longer airing at a certain time or done stuff, then it ends up impacting. That's just not going to be something that happens with basketball, because as much as people talk about a new tournament this year, next year you could have Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, and UCLA in the Final Four. Who knows? Because it's just going to be so changeable.
Yeah. Sorry. So that was Monday night was the least watched national title game since Villanova, Michigan. But that game was on Turner.
Right.
This game was on CBS. So you usually get probably about 4 million or so, just naturally because maybe 3 million, just naturally because it's CBS. So let me ask you one other question. The first off, thought One Shining Moment was fantastic this year. Some years it's been off lately, and I felt like they really actually took a nice time with it this time around. Did you want more Jim Nance stuff, or did you get enough?
No, I got enough. And actually, my question for you is, will you miss him? And I guess I hadn't paid enough attention. I thought he was leaving. He's just leaving basketball, right?
Yeah, he's just leaving basketball. Yeah.
Okay, so what is that? 8 weekends a year for him? I mean,
Well,
realistically, because he talks about spending time with his family and wants to invest, but okay, not this weekend because he's going to Augusta, right? And
I
he's going
think
to have the same time from Augusta to football every year. I
I
just, it
think
was
that's
just weird
part
to
of
me.
it. I think that's part of it. I think it's the fact that you're really doing 3 weekends in a row of back to back to back of basketball, and then you go to Augusta, which, oh darn, you have to go to Augusta.
Right.
But to me, I will miss him. We had this conversation recently. Like, to me, he is I think of him as a basketball announcer. Like, he does football, but I enjoy him most on basketball. So yes, I will miss him. He's been the voice of the tournament, pretty much the mainstay of my tournament enjoyment. That being said, when Kevin Harlan probably rolls in there next year, or whoever it is, probably Kevin Harlan, I enjoy him just as much. It'll feel weird at first, very much how the World Series felt a little different this year with Burkhart. But then by game, 5, I was like, okay, this is fine. This is not like I'm just watching a baseball game, and it's Kevin Burkhart talking to me. So I was surprised that they didn't have I missed the thing on CBS, the little round of applause thing. I was surprised they didn't have any little things during the national title game more so. His sign off was actually kind of emotional, and there was something else. Oh, and then he was in one shining moment very briefly, and I thought they did a nice job of not making it about Jim Nance when they very well could have made.
And he
something
very
like
well
that.
could have said, "Hey,
don't show him. Yeah, don't put me in
exactly.
this
I
type
don't.
thing."
I don't need to do anything special that night." So
Yeah. Okay. I want a bracket poll, Steve. I don't want to. It's the first time
men's or women's?
men's.
Really?
Yeah.
What percentage were you in? What was the winning? What was what percentile was the winning bracket in?
I have to look. I had one of the 4 Final Four teams right, and then I had San Diego State in the national title game.
You did?
Yes.
Wow. Good on you.
So that's the first time in my life there.
How many brackets did you have?
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
One on ESPN. One on ESPN because I did it through Corey Listoki, who hosts Hardcore PSU Football, his podcast group, and then I did one. The Frederick Keys do one where they give you if you finish in the top 3, you can get 4 box seats to a Frederick Keys game, basically. So I didn't win, but I forget there's something else you can win. So yeah. Anyways, I wanted to brag about that real quick.
Job.
Thank you. Speaking of bragging, I think not Penn State women's basketball, but the NCAA women's basketball tournament has a very big opportunity to brag about how well they've done. And I have to say, I've never seen more people plugged in and tuned into college women's basketball at the tournament than I saw over the weekend. I found myself sitting here on Friday night watching some of the games, and then I watched a little bit of the game on Sunday as well. The national title game, probably the decent chunk of the second half. And apparently everybody else did because it was the highest rated national title game. Hold on, let me find the number. I think it was 9.9 million was what I saw. And it peaked at 12.6 million. So I forget what the men's let me see if this article says what the men's game peaked at. Doesn't say. But by far the most interesting and most watched women's tournament, and in that you had Caitlin Clark as the top player, probably the most recognizable player. An LSU team that was all around very good, but didn't really have a superstar in the same way that Caitlin Clark is, maybe outside of their coach. So I don't know. I'm not surprised by this. I feel like this snowball has been rolling, and we finally hit that. It's a very large snowball, and I think this is here to stay type thing.
Yeah, and I think we talked about ratings earlier. I think what the ratings and interest show that this game's going to be on primetime next year, right? I mean, that's where those things matter. That's where it should be. It should be on ABC primetime. I don't know what else other networks had against it not against it, but were counter programming against on Sunday night, or why you wanted to put it there on Sunday night for ABC. I forget what else they had. LSU's a big name brand school. you know, their coach has won national championships and now is one at a different school. And I'm not surprised. I guess the thing from the broadcast, the national championship that surprised me was their emphasis on this is only her second year at LSU. Well, okay. I mean, I fully expected her to be in a Final Four when she made the move. Like, I mean, and I didn't have a time frame on it. It wouldn't surprise me if it was in her first year. It's a great school, lots of money, good resources. It's home for her. She's a proven winner. Like, I guess I wasn't shocked that LSU was there in year two.
Um, this kind of relates back to the Penn State basketball conversation. Like, there's no more excuse for that. Less of an excuse for that now with the portal. And I think
Right.
it's fascinating to see it play out. Like, you very much saw it play out. Angel Reese was originally started at Maryland, is actually from down my way. So, you know, there's less of an excuse for a coach like that to kind of come up with that type thing. Those types of performances. I do think there is still a lot of disparity between average women's
Oh, yeah.
basketball teams and good women's basketball teams. Like, I think you see that in the tournament with very limited upsets, more so than maybe lately last few years, but in general, it's relatively chalk for the first maybe two rounds. You might get an upset here or there, but yeah, I I don't know. I think, like, you and I are sitting here having a conversation about women's basketball, and I think that shows, not that we wouldn't before, but that shows how much, like,
No, no. I mean, it's
it's
the
changed.
father of two daughters and having covered the Lady Lions to the Final Four in 2000. Like, women's basketball is a good sport. When the teams are evenly matched, it's good basketball. That difference between the really good teams, the elite teams, and the really good teams is still pretty steep. And I think media wise, my takeaway from the Final Four with the Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark stuff was I think the media was lazy and took some easy storylines. And I think that the players, I think Angel Reese, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where whatever the academy high school is that she went to. I think the I'm from the hood storyline feels more like storyline than actual truth, but maybe I'm wrong. It just I felt there was some lazy stereotypical stuff
Yeah.
for that stuff to play out. Like Angel Reese wasn't off the hook until Caitlin Clark said it's okay. I don't have it. Like, I thought that was, every part of that story was checking a box on stereotypical lazy racist sports journalism, and I felt bad for that for the industry.
No, I agree there. Like, I think that's kind of maybe how it got spun, and I think probably some of that is just because it was race, like, it was a black woman doing it to a white woman, and even though the white woman had done it before, like, uh, to me, like, I think it's unfortunate that we just had the most talked about women's basketball final, and this is kind of like overcrowding it. And I don't think that, like, Angel Reese had every right to go do that. Like, great. Like, if you want to trash talk, great. Like, that you're making the sport more interesting. You're making it more fun by doing that. Obviously, there's a line, but she certainly was nowhere near it.
Right.
So I don't know. I thought that was, I agree with you on that. Like, it just felt like it was lazy and made into a story that really probably, I don't think this would be a story in the men's game.
No, it's just driven. It was driven by social media. It was driven by race, which is a shame. Because if it would have been two black kids or two white kids, either way, like, okay, they're just talking, right?
Yeah.
And Caitlin Clark was talking smack, and guess what? She didn't play as well in the championship game. She played out of her mind in that national semifinal. Like, good Lord, 41 points and 8 assists. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But you talk smack, sometimes it comes back to bite you in the backside, and it just did. And that's okay. Like, that's just how it goes when in sports.
No, I agree with that 100%. Angel Reese won. You won the national title. You could do as much smacking talking as you want to. Like, go ahead. You rub it in my
Exactly.
face. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's get to the wrestling topic. Endeavor Sports, I believe that's how it's pronounced. They have purchased the right. I guess rights probably isn't they have basically purchased WWE.
Right.
Steve, I'm not a wrestling guy. Never really been a wrestling guy. I am fascinated by this though. Like, are we gonna see Conor McGregor? I don't know if Conor McGregor is still fighting UFC, but are we gonna see him in the ring more often? My first thought about all of this went to Ronda Rousey. Like I kind of have to chuckle if you're Ronda Rousey. Like she very famously left UFC to go to the WWE.
Right.
Um, does it do anything for me? No, not really. I don't really care.
Yeah, I think to me it's a business, sports business story, an entertainment sports business story, right? Because between UFC and WWE, they have deals with their programming to show up on ESPN and Fox and NBC, right? So, and how they produce and share events draws crowds and influences how other sports activate, or maybe draws from how other sports activate too, right? It's both. They're not the only one who you know pushes the envelope or does interesting things. But it's, I mean, there's a boatload of money to be had. I mean, WrestleMania this weekend made 21.6 million on gate revenue alone. So people are spending money in this sports related predetermined outcome stuff, right? And I think that's the funny, I mean, to me, that's the interesting thing is just the business of it. Like, it's almost confusing. It's almost, meta in that way of like, oh, we're talking about this and this, like everything's, well, when they do interviews with these people or talk about what happened, like, are they talking as the character? Are they talking as a person? Like, it's almost fascinating to watch from that standpoint. But to me, it's newsworthy just because it's programming. I mean, and it gets hits and interests and if we saw clicks for what ESPN has or somebody else does online, you would probably be shocked by the amount of stuff, the amount of traffic that the WWE stuff
Oh yeah, I'm
garners.
sure.
Plus, my other hat, like we have some alums who work there and produce their content, so that's always interesting to me too. So
I don't have anything else to add. Sorry.
it's all good.
Okay. You feel good? Do you get all that out of your system?
It's there you go.
Okay.
Cleansed.
You're a wrestling guy. Like, you used to watch or no?
Yeah, when I was younger, and then when, again, I think I've talked before, when I was in Pittsburgh, I would do the entertainment stories, like when the
Right,
Civic Arena
right.
was sold out. They were great people to deal with. Like, there was no BS. That was, kind of fun to deal with. So I'm intrigued by that aspect, and even a little bit of the storyline stuff, times of how they do it. Like, there was supposed to be a title change this past weekend, didn't happen because they're making money at the gate with the current champ, and I think they're afraid to change that, and they're going to keep making money doing what they're doing and push some stuff off. So it's just interesting to watch. So
I just never could get into it.
Yeah.
All right. This week's old guy, young guy. We got some feedback on our last week's old guy, young guy. So I think this is a good old guy, young guy in terms of, you might have an opinion. I might have an opinion. Steve, you brought it up, Easter baskets. What is your take on Easter baskets?
I think they're great, right? Like, they've always been, like, when I was young, Easter baskets were a thing, right? Like, you had to go find them, you had to go do whatever. I'm sure our girls searched every year that they were around. And who are we seeing Sunday? I think we're seeing only one of them Sunday, but I'm sure there will be a gift of sorts that constitutes an Easter basket, and there might even be an Easter egg hunt with the folks that are your age, and eggs and little candies and pieces of paper that can be redeemed for gifts and or money. So,
Okay. The Samsel household sounds like they do Easter gifts or Easter
driven
baskets.
largely by the smartest person in the house. That would be Susan, but yes.
Okay.
What about you?
It's funny because, like, we don't really do Easter stuff anymore, but growing up, loved Easter. Used to, like, Easter was the best because you usually got two things. You got one of those styrofoam airplanes that were very large and that would fall apart anytime you would go like that with them. And then also meant that you would get a new wiffle ball bat set usually.
Okay, that's good.
So yes, I'm a big fan of Easter baskets. I want to know, are you like, do you want regular candy, or do you want like the Easter themed candy? Like, do you want like I'm thinking of one thing and one thing only right now, and that is a one of the giant chocolate eggs, peanut butter eggs
Peanut butter chocolate eggs, yeah.
from Gardner's Candy that are
Yep.
quite literally the size of my head.
Yeah, I think Sam's waiting for one of those too.
Okay.
And I told Susan, I'm like, we could make those.
No,
because that was,
you could, but it's not going to taste the same.
well, I don't know that I ever had a real one, like, because my grandmother made them, like on
Okay.
on the dairy farm where she was at, like we would go to her house and there would be like the whole countertop would be filled with peanut butter and coconut cream eggs, and that's what she did, right? And that's what we got. And my mom made them for years. We might have tried them once or twice, and then we were like, okay, it was Gardner's, right? Like we'll be okay. So yeah, no, that's yeah. If you don't have that, I really don't want anything else.
Okay.
You know, I want the big
and-
ones. You got a slice, and they last like a week and a half, right? Like
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Those ones are that's the only way to do it. Like that's nothing. That's and I my favorite hobby, of course, at Easter time is putting marshmallow peeps into the microwave. The subtle joy that brings me. And if you've never done it, which I'm sure you have.
I think I've seen it done once, but I made one surprise. We didn't have as many peeps. Our best Easter story was actually a dog story. Like when the kids were young, we went to see my parents, and we went to church with the kids, put the dog in the hallway with a puppy gate, child gate up on the hallway, so he couldn't get out and get into the house. We come back and he's like sleeping in the back room. And we're like, oh my gosh, that's so great. You're such a good dog. And of course, we went first to him because it's all about the dog. We came back out. We looked and all the Easter baskets were destroyed. Like he had eaten every little thing and hopped back over the fence and went back and laid down. That's so impressive. Smarter than us and full of chocolate in his tummy.
Good for him. Good for him.
Exactly.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Happy Easter. I'm going to cut the grass this week, Steve. I'm excited. Have you cut your grass yet?
Not yet, but coming soon. Maybe next week.
Yeah, that's where I think I'm going to do it this week. Anyways, in the meantime, we have a podcast. You just listen. Actually, hold on, mate. I got to think about how I do this now. We have a YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, you're watching it, please hit that subscribe button. I think it's maybe in this direction, or if like kind of over
down there
Steve,
somewhere.
Yeah, Steve, point down. There you go.
Somewhere down there is a subscribe button.
Yeah, somewhere in that general area. We really appreciate that. We have a newsletter. You can sign up on our blog, which is stuffsummersays.com. There's a ton of buttons that you can click to sign up.
How often does the newsletter come out?
The newsletter is coming out right now, roughly once a month. We have one planned for probably within the next 2 weeks related to blue white. As we get closer to football season, Steve, great question. We will start pumping those out probably more often.
I kind of want to know too, because if I had to send anything, I was kind of happy.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Hey, I shared the content calendar with you. Okay, it's all color coordinated and everything. And let's see. So we have the newsletter. We have a blog, which I mentioned. We have emails. My email is Darian@stuffsummersays.com. Steve, you have an email.
My email is Steve@stuffsummersays.com. 2 weeks in a row for that, baby.
I'm proud of you. The podcast also has an email, podcast@stuffsummersays.com. I think there might be some other emails floating out there, but I think I got all of those. Lastly, we have Twitter handles. Mine is @stuffsummersays. Yours is?
Steve Samsel.
Cool. Other than that, thumbs up, 5 stars, all of that on the podcast. We appreciate you listening, appreciate you watching, appreciate all the feedback we've been getting lately. Getting a lot more feedback lately, and I think I know why, because we started, actually trying a little bit harder, and it's working. So
imagine that.
And
this is only week 2 of video, so maybe we'll have it figured out pretty soon.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. So, all right, goodbye.
See ya.